How's it going? Thanks for joining me tonight. We're going to dive into the fourth part of the Yoga Sutras. If the sutras are new to you, the first three padas should be read by now, but still, if you're taking in the lines, it's still going to be beneficial. Just hearing one of these sutras can completely change your path. Repeated study of the Yoga Sutras is essential. That's what the sages say. Let's dive in. If you want to say hi, say who you are. If you have any questions or comments, anything you can add to the study, that'd be great. Sutra 4.1. Higher functioning skills and talents are attained through birth, herbs, mantras, self-discipline, or samadhi. Sutra 4.2. The flow of universal energy brings about transformation. These transformations evolve you and push you forward into your next birth. Sutra 4.3. The flow of energy in the multiverse removes obstacles to evolution, like how a farmer removes dirt, blocking the irrigation system, allowing the water to nourish the land. So when they say you're supposed to accept pain as purification, what that is it's said to be the energy of God flowing through you, through the multiverse, and it removes your shortcomings. Sutra 4.4. From the sense of individuality springs the created or fabricated mind. Lost connection there for a second. Thanks for staying. Sutra 4.5. Consciousness is one, but it branches into innumerable different types of activities and thought waves. Sutra 4.6. Only the mental state shaped by meditation leaves no impressions or influences. Sutra 4.7. A yogi's actions are neither good nor bad, whereas a non-yogi's actions are either good, bad, or a mixture of good and bad. Sutra 4.8. Good, bad, and actions create subconscious impressions, habits, and desires that manifest when conditions are favorable. You just got to take these in. Sutra 4.9. Even though it is divided by incarnation, place, and time, life is a continuous process. The uninterrupted close relationship between memory and subliminal impressions causes the effects of actions to remain intact from one life to the next, as if there were no separation between births. Really, when you start talking about this stuff, you have to have experienced your past lives. And if you just sit there and meditate on your mental impressions, the past lives are supposed to bubble up, but still to read it and know it. Sutra 4.10. Since the desire to live is eternal, these impressions, memories, and desires are beginningless. Where do they come from? They're beginningless. Sutra 4.11. Impressions and desires are bound together depending on cause and effect. When cause and effect cease to exist, impressions and desires cease to function. This pada is really deep. Sutra 4.12. The past and the future exist and are really a continuation of the same moment, but they appear different due to the different conditions present. Sutra 4.13. The past, present, and future intermingle rhythmically and interweave within the 11 dimensions. They change the composition of physical properties into gross and subtle. So this is really the quantum physics of the yoga, explaining how the changes from the energy of the universe and the changes from the past to from the future to the past to the present, how it happens and how physical things change into gross and subtle properties. Sutra 4.14. The laws that govern the transformations taking place as time changes from the future to the past to the present cause modifications in objects, but their energy is never lost and the reality around you remains constant. So this is important. Your karma, it never is lost. Anything that you do is never lost, but your your consciousness in the present moment is always constant. So even though everything's changing, there's still something that's always constant from moment to moment. Sutra 415. An object has the same identity in all circumstances. However, due to differences of mentality in various minds, each individual mind may view the same object differently. So here they're getting into like perspectives and consciousness and how different perspectives may see things differently, but in reality, the consciousness of it and the actual objects are the same. An object exists independent of its cognizance by an individual consciousness. What happens to an object when your consciousness is not there to perceive it? Like what happens if a tree falls in the wood and nobody's there to hear it? Sutra 417. A thing is known or unknown by the mind depending on whether it is noticed by it. Sutra 418. The mind is not self-illuminated because it has to be viewed in the light of the soul. Sutra 420. The mind cannot perceive the soul and objects at the same time. So here in the yoga, the way that the yogic system is, when you're doing your pratyahara, the fourth limb, you're focusing inwards towards the soul. And the reason why that is because when we're all caught up in the senses all the time, the senses are always focused outwards. But in the fourth limb, you focus it inwards because you can't focus on worldly things in your soul at the same time. Sutra 421. Since multiple minds are able to understand each other, there must be an underlying consciousness that flows throughout the universe. Otherwise, there would be too much confusion because each person's reality would not be contingent on the facts of the reality of the others. So here, it's like the Dalai Lama says, black is black, white is white. If somebody says black is red, there's something wrong. Sutra 422. Consciousness becomes aware of itself when it identifies its source, which is the soul, and then becomes one with it. Sutra 423. When consciousness resides in the soul, it fully understands whatever it perceives. So in other words, your mind gets in the way. When you're one with your soul, you understand everything that you perceive. I like to think of like a child that's like 3 years old, 4 years old. They have a completely clear mind and you can teach them a whole new language and they just understand it. Sutra 422. Consciousness becomes aware of itself when it identifies its source, which is the soul, and becomes one with it. 423. 424. Though having countless desires and mental impressions, the mind exists for the sake of the soul because it can only act in association with it. So the mind is there for purposes of the soul to experience life and to reach ultimate samadhi, which is liberation from physical existence. Well, the whole thing is that the suffering and the pain, all the negatives that go along with it, are transcended when the soul is free from attachments to the physical realm. 425. Once you know the distinction between the mind and the soul, questions about the nature of the soul come to an end. When I do, one of the meditations that I do is picturing my soul being close to God, close to the source. And when I'm out of my body doing these deep meditations, the longing for the worldly things is there. Like your attachments to the world is there. And it causes great pain because you're away from your loved ones, you're away from the things you love, the food you like, the pleasures that you like. Sutra 426. Then consciousness is drawn magnetically towards the soul due to the gravitational force of its illuminated wisdom. So when you practice the 7 limbs and the soul becomes pure and you start to do your pratyahara, naturally your consciousness will come inwards towards the soul. You lose your appetites for the earthly things. 427. If you are careless, thoughts and conceptualizations may separate the mind and the soul. So here, the mindfulness has to be practiced sincerely and devoutly. As soon as you lose your intention and your mindfulness, the mind gets drawn back towards the worldly things and you get caught back in samsara. The soul becomes fettered back in samsara. The concentration definitely has to be developed. And if you're not doing the meditation, then you go into mental decline. So it takes a very devout, sincere practitioner to be able to reach these types of levels. 428. You should handle these thoughts, conceptualizations, and memories by being mindful, replacing all negative thoughts and non-virtuous intent with their opposing positive opposites, and eliminating self-centeredness. Here again, the self-centeredness, one thing that I want to say, because in a lot of these texts they say ego, and really it's personality, or the idea that you're separate from the universe. So when you say, I don't like that, I like this, you have to understand what your personality and your I consciousness is. The self-centeredness is an illusion that you're separate from creation. It's a temporary illusion. Sutra 429. When you lose desire to possess even the highest rewards, then remain in this constant enlightened state of consciousness, Dharma Mega Samadhi occurs, the conscious cloud of virtue, justice, law, morality, religious merit, and steadfast decree. You can see it when somebody reaches that state. You can see their halo, you can see their aura, you can see their soul and their spirit. Like, if you reach this state, it's literally visible. Sutra 430. Then afflictions and karma are ended. See, here's the thing. Afflictions are ended. See, the whole thing is that in life you have physical pain, you have mental pain, you have emotional pain, and then you can have your soul in torment. And these are all afflictions that end when you get to this process. So what happens is, normally the people are always going towards pleasures and happiness because they don't want to experience the pain, or they're covering up their pain. And with this, the afflictions end and the cause for pain ends. So there's actually, you transcend it. That's why this practice is here. Because when you're doing these karmas, it doesn't just hurt you, it hurts others. So that everybody's connected with their karma. And due to these desires and attachments, it's causing everybody else suffering. Sutra 431. Then the shrouds of impurities are removed and the highest pure infinite wisdom is attained. After this, there is little left to be known. 432. Then the sequence of successive mutations ceases to function. So all these mutations that are happening outside of you, inside of you, they cease to function when you reach the ultimate state. You're in this state of consciousness, and when the aggregates and the gunas change, when the physical things change, they no longer affect you. Sutra 433. The sequence of movements takes place moment to moment, but is perceived only at the end of the transformations. This one's important. 434. You really have to know every single one of the sutras, because they're put together in a way where you have to know the entire text. That's why this is an ongoing study. That's why I'm studying it every night, because once you grasp the entire text, then you fully understand what they're trying to say. But if you're missing one of the sutras, it's like having a blanket with missing one thread. You have to have every one of the sutras. 434. When experience has liberated the soul, the gunas absorb into nature, and the power of the soul reabsorbs back into itself. Then perfect independence is realized. If you don't know the yogic terms, you have to study a little bit longer, but if you keep going with it, you'll understand. Basically, the soul. Okay, you have the original source of energy that created the universe, right? I call it God because it is God. It's the creator of everything. But then you have the Big Bang, which is created by God's thought and his word. So he thought about all the laws of the universe, and he created it using his speech, and he created the universe. There's a piece of the original energy within your heart. And when you attain this state and your soul's completely pure, then your soul becomes one with the universal soul. And I experienced this during Nidra. So there's three states of consciousness that all humans go through. The first state of consciousness is when you're wide awake. You've had your coffee, you're at your job, you're working, it's noon, it's 2:00, you're wide awake, you're fully conscious, and you're physically acting, you're wide awake. The second state of consciousness is called Nidra. Nidra occurs from the time that the head hits the pillow until the time that you dream. Most people are unconscious during this state. But when you practice mindfulness, when you hit the pillow until you dream, if you practice mindfulness enough, you'll experience consciousness during that state. consciousness that I experienced was oneness with all of existence. So I could see a light, I could see the stars, I could see a bright, divine, effulgent light running through everything. I could see it and I could feel it, but I was seeing it from the inside of my view of my soul, not from my physical eyes. During that time, you can experience what it's like to have your soul back joined with the soul of the universe. Then the next state is the dreaming state that you go into, where you're experiencing that consciousness and you're experiencing things, but you don't have a physical body. Thanks so much for joining, guys. I really appreciate it. Questions and comments are welcome. If you have a copy of the sutras, that's totally fine. Again, when we're getting into these padas, if you don't know the yogic terms and you have any questions, please ask. Thanks so much for joining, guys. Be well.